David lived on the family farm with his daughter Mia. After his wife had passed away several years ago, he had raised Mia on his own. Life on the farm was simple and quiet. Every morning, David woke up before sunrise. He fed the chickens, collected eggs, and tended to the cows. Mia, a lively and curious 10-year-old, helped wherever she could. She had a small garden patch of her own near the farmhouse where she grew tomatoes, carrots, and sunflowers. The farm was surrounded by tall oak trees and rolling green fields. Birds sang in the morning, and the air always smelled of fresh grass and soil. David liked the calmness, but he also wanted Mia to grow up learning about hard work and responsibility. Despite the routine, the farm was filled with small surprises. One day, a fox sneaked into the chicken coop. Another day, a deer wandered too close to the barn. David taught Mia to be patient and careful with every creature on the farm. One warm afternoon, David decided to repair the fence near the old barn. The barn was very old. Its red paint had faded and some wooden beams had begun to rot. It had been in David's family for generations. While digging a post hole to fix a broken section of the fence, his shovel hit something hard in the ground. David stopped and knelt down. The soil around the object was compact and the shape looked unusual. Curious, he dug carefully, brushing away the dirt with his hands. Soon he uncovered a small carved stone. It was shaped like a sun, with fine lines etched into the surface. David held it up, turning it in the sunlight. The carvings looked old, and the stone had a smooth, almost polished texture. He had never seen anything like it before. "Mia, come here," David called. She ran over, her ponytail bouncing as she approached. "What is it, Dad?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "I'm not sure," David replied. "It looks very old. Someone must have left it here a long time ago." Mia's imagination ran wild. "Maybe it is from a treasure, or maybe it is magic," she exclaimed. David smiled at her ideas, but he also felt a strange curiosity. The farm had always been familiar, but now it seemed like it had a hidden past. Over the next few days, David kept the stone in a small wooden box inside the farmhouse. He showed it to Mia often, explaining that it might be an ancient artifact. They looked up books about local history in the small-town library, trying to find similar items. Mia enjoyed reading about the people who lived in their area hundreds of years ago. She loved imagining how they farmed, built their homes, and lived without electricity or machines. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, David went to check the barn. The air smelled of hay and animals. He heard the low hum of cows in the field and the soft cooing of pigeons from the loft. As he walked past the wooden posts, he noticed something unusual. A small pile of hay had been disturbed, and there were footprints in the dirt floor. David's heart beat a little faster. Who could be here? He thought. The farm was quiet at night, and no one had come close to the barn without his notice. He called Mia to come with him. "Mia, look at this," David said, pointing to the footprints. "Someone has been here recently." Mia looked carefully and then gasped. "Maybe it is a ghost, Dad," she said with a nervous laugh. David chuckled, but he also felt uneasy. "Ghosts are unlikely," he said, "but we need to be careful. Let's keep an eye on the barn from now on." The next morning, David returned to the spot where he had found the stone. He decided to dig more carefully around the barn. The soil was soft, and as he worked, he uncovered another artifact. This one was a small coin, golden in color and worn with age. It had strange symbols etched into it. David held it up to the sunlight and wondered what it meant. Mia looked over his shoulder, her eyes shining. "Dad, maybe there is more treasure buried under the barn," she said. David smiled, but he was also cautious. "It is possible, Mia, but we must be careful. These items are very old, and we don't know their history." Over the next few weeks, David and Mia began searching the area around the barn more thoroughly. Each day brought new discoveries. Some days they found small statues carved from stone or wood. Other days they discovered old maps or pieces of metal shaped into tools. Every item told a story. David realized that the land they had lived on for generations was much older and more mysterious than he had ever imagined. Evenings were spent cleaning the artifacts and trying to understand them. David carefully noted where each item was found, and Mia helped by drawing pictures in her notebook. She wrote down her own ideas about the artifacts, imagining stories of ancient people who had lived on the land long before them. As the discoveries continued, strange things began to happen. One night, David heard soft noises coming from the barn. It sounded like someone moving the hay or shifting the tools. He woke Mia and whispered, Stay here and don't make any noise." Slowly, he walked toward the barn, flashlight in hand. The beam of light swept across the floor, but nothing seemed out of place. The noises had stopped, but David's mind was racing. The next morning, David found more signs of someone else being in the barn. Footprints that did not match his or Mia's were visible in the dirt. Some of the tools had been moved slightly. David felt a mix of excitement and worry. He knew the artifacts were important, but he also realized that someone else might know about them. Despite the growing unease, David and Mia continued their work. They started planning a more careful excavation around the barn. David made a small wooden box to store the artifacts safely, and he taught Mia how to handle the items gently. Together they explored every corner of the barn and the nearby fields, hoping to uncover more of the hidden history of the farm. One afternoon, while digging near the old oak tree at the edge of the field, Mia shouted excitedly, "Dad, I found something!" She held up a small, shiny object covered in dirt. David ran over and saw that it was a bronze amulet, decorated with patterns similar to the sun-shaped stone they had found first. "This is amazing," David said. "It seems like the farm has been keeping its secrets for a very long time." Mia hugged the amulet carefully. "I want to find all the treasures, Dad. Can we keep looking?" David smiled and nodded. "Yes, Mia, but we must be careful. These artifacts are special and we need to respect them." As the sun set behind the hills, David looked around the farm. It was still the same quiet place, filled with the smell of grass and fresh earth, but now it felt alive with stories from the past. He realized that this discovery was more than just artifacts. It was a connection to the people who had lived here long before him, and a new adventure for him and Mia. That night, as David tucked Mia into bed, he held the sun-shaped stone in his hand. He wondered what secrets it still held and how far the story of the farm would go. Outside, the barn stood silently, hiding its mysteries, waiting for the next day's discoveries. For David and Mia, life on the farm was no longer just simple and quiet. It was filled with history, mystery, and the thrill of uncovering secrets buried in the earth for hundreds of years. And though the days ahead might bring challenges, they knew they would face them together. After discovering the bronze amulet near the old oak tree, David and Mia could not stop thinking about the farm's hidden past. Every morning, they woke up eager to explore more of the land. The discoveries had sparked a new sense of adventure, and they knew that the farm held many secrets yet to be found. David decided they needed a plan. He spread out a large piece of paper on the kitchen table and drew a rough map of the farm. He marked all the spots where they had already found artifacts. Mia helped by pointing to areas near the barn and along the creek where she thought they should dig next. "Maybe there are more hidden treasures under the barn floor or near the old well," she said. David nodded. Her excitement was contagious, and it reminded him of how curious she was about the world. The next morning, they started their exploration near the barn. David examined the wooden floor carefully. Some of the boards were loose and could be removed without much trouble. Mia held the flashlight while David lifted a few boards. Beneath them was a small hollow space filled with dust, dirt, and cobwebs. David's heart raced. Could there be something hidden there for years? They dug gently and pulled out several objects wrapped in old cloth. There were small stone figurines, tiny metal tools, and a few broken coins. Each item seemed ancient, and David handled them with care. Mia watched closely, her eyes wide with wonder. "Dad, who do you think left these here?" she asked. David shook his head. "I am not sure, Mia, but it looks like someone used this place a very long time ago. Maybe they wanted to hide these things for safety." As they cleaned the artifacts on the farmhouse porch, they noticed that some of the markings on the coins and figurines were familiar. The sun-shaped stone and the bronze amulet had similar designs. David realized that the items must be connected. He began to think that the farm had been a place of importance for people long ago, and that the barn had played a key role in hiding their treasures. Over the next few days, David and Mia explored more areas of the farm. They checked near the creek, behind the orchard, and along the edge of the forest. In every place they dug, they found small clues of the past. Some were simple items like broken pottery, while others were carefully carved objects that seemed to hold meaning. Each discovery made them more determined to learn the full story of their farm. One rainy afternoon, David decided to inspect the barn more thoroughly. The heavy rain made the wooden boards creak and the wind whistled through the gaps in the walls. As he walked inside, he noticed a part of the barn that he had never paid much attention to, a section of wall near the back that looked slightly newer than the rest of the barn. David pushed gently, and to his surprise, he discovered a small hidden door. It was cleverly disguised, blending perfectly with the surrounding wood. His hands trembled as he opened it. Behind the door was a narrow room filled with dust and shadows. At first it looked empty, but as David's eyes adjusted to the dim light, he saw more artifacts. The hidden room contained stacks of old wooden boxes and crates. Some were filled with coins, others with carvings and maps. There were also a few pieces of parchment with drawings of animals, stars, and strange symbols. David could not believe what he had found. The room seemed untouched for decades, if not longer. "Mia, come quickly," he called. Mia ran in, her boots squeaking on the wet floor. When she saw the room, she gasped. "Wow, Dad, this is amazing. There is so much here." David smiled. "Yes, Mia. This must have been a very important place for whoever hid these items. We need to be careful and document everything we find." They spent the rest of the afternoon examining the items. David carefully lifted each artifact, brushing off dust and noting its condition. Mia sketched some of the carvings in her notebook, making sure to capture all the details. They realized that the artifacts were not just random objects. They were connected, forming a story of the people who had lived on the land long ago. As they worked, David noticed something strange. Some of the boxes appeared to have been disturbed recently. One lid was slightly open, and a few items were not in the same order as the others. His heart sank. "Mia, I think someone else has been here," he whispered. Mia looked worried. "Who could it be, Dad? Nobody comes near the farm." David shook his head. "I do not know. But we need to be very careful from now on. The farm may not be as quiet as we thought." That evening, David locked the barn and made a list of all the items they had found. He realized that the farm was more than just land with crops and animals. It was a place with history, mysteries, and stories waiting to be uncovered. He also knew that the discoveries came with responsibility. The artifacts had to be preserved, and the secrets of the hidden room had to be protected. The next day, David contacted a local historian, Mr. Lewis, who had written books about the area's history. He wanted to get advice on how to handle the artifacts and learn more about the people who might have hidden them. Mr. Lewis was excited and agreed to visit the farm the following week. David felt relieved. At least they would have an expert to help explain the mysteries they had uncovered. Meanwhile, Mia could not stop thinking about the hidden room and the treasures inside it. She often imagined the lives of the people who had lived on the farm centuries ago. "Dad, do you think they knew we would find these things one day?" she asked. David smiled. "Perhaps. Or perhaps they just wanted to keep their belongings safe. Either way, we are lucky to discover them." Over the following days, David and Mia continued to explore the barn and its surroundings carefully. They marked the spots where they found artifacts on their map and planned their next digs. Each day brought new discoveries. Some were small, like a carved button or a tiny bell, while others were larger, like pieces of pottery or old tools. Even with the excitement, David could not shake the feeling that they were not alone. The recent disturbance in the hidden room and the footprints in the barn had him worried. He decided to install a small lock on the hidden door and to keep a close watch on the barn. Mia promised to be careful and to alert him if she noticed anything unusual. Despite the growing sense of mystery, David and Mia found joy in their discoveries. They shared stories of the past over dinner, imagining what life might have been like hundreds of years ago. The farm had become more than a place to live. It had become a place of learning, adventure, and wonder. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned orange and pink, David looked at the farm. The barn, the fields, and the hidden room all held secrets waiting to be uncovered. He felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. The farm's history was now part of their lives, and he knew that the coming days would bring even more surprises. Mia held her favorite artifact, the bronze amulet, and smiled. "Dad, I think the farm is magical," she said. David laughed softly. "Maybe it is, Mia. Maybe it is." As night fell, the barn stood silently in the distance, guarding its hidden treasures. David and Mia went to bed with thoughts of the day's discoveries and hopes for what they might find tomorrow. The quiet farm was no longer just simple and peaceful. It was alive with history, mystery, and the promise of adventure. A week had passed since David and Mia had discovered the hidden room in the barn. The farm was buzzing with curiosity and excitement. David spent most of his days examining the artifacts, cleaning them carefully and documenting everything in a notebook. Mia helped with sketches and organizing the items. They were becoming experts in handling the treasures. Though neither of them fully understood their history, one rainy afternoon, as David was carrying a box of artifacts into the farmhouse, a knock came at the door. He wiped his hands on his shirt and opened it to see a man standing in the doorway. He was tall, with neatly combed brown hair and a friendly smile. His clothes were clean but looked like they belonged to someone who spent a lot of time indoors rather than on a farm. "Hello," the man said. "My name is Henry. I am a historian. I heard about some interesting discoveries on this farm and thought I could help." David was cautious but polite. "I am David, and this is my daughter, Mia. We did find some artifacts recently, but I'm not sure what they are." "How did you hear about them?" Henry smiled. "I have friends in town who mentioned the findings. I specialize in local history and ancient artifacts. Perhaps I can provide some guidance on what you have discovered." David hesitated for a moment but then nodded. "All right. You can take a look, but please be careful. These items are very old and fragile." Henry entered the farmhouse and immediately showed great interest in the boxes of artifacts. He examined each item carefully, asking questions about where and how they were found. David explained their discoveries one by one, pointing to the hidden room in the barn and showing the map he had created. Mia watched Henry closely, curious about his knowledge and impressed by his attention to detail. Over the next few days, Henry visited the farm regularly. He seemed genuinely interested in the artifacts, and David appreciated his insights. Henry explained that some of the carvings on the stones were similar to symbols used by early settlers in the region. He suggested that the hidden room might have been used as a storage place for important items during times of trouble long ago. Despite Henry's helpfulness, David began to notice small things that made him uneasy. One morning he went to the barn to check on the artifacts and found a box slightly moved from where he had left it. A few small tools were not in their usual place. David did not want to alarm Mia, but he decided to keep a closer watch. "Mia," he said gently that evening, "we need to be careful. Someone might know about our discoveries. We cannot leave the artifacts unattended." Mia nodded, her eyes serious. "I will help, Dad. I promise I will watch the barn too." David smiled. "Thank you, Mia. That means a lot." As the week went on, David noticed more signs of unusual activity. Small footprints appeared in the dirt floor of the barn that did not match his or Mia's. Tools were shifted slightly, and some haystacks looked disturbed. David tried to figure out if it was Henry or someone else, but he had no proof. Meanwhile, Mia's curiosity led her to explore areas of the farm that David had not checked carefully. One afternoon, while walking near the back corner of the barn, she noticed a loose floorboard. Kneeling down, she carefully lifted it and discovered a small compartment hidden beneath. Inside were more artifacts, a tiny carved box, a few metal trinkets, and a bundle of old papers. Mia ran to find David. "Dad, look what I found," she exclaimed. David examined the compartment and the items carefully. "Mia, this is incredible. It seems the farm has even more secrets than we thought. We need to document these as well." He took notes and placed the items in a new wooden box. They carefully returned the compartment to its original condition, so nothing would be disturbed. As they worked, David could not shake the feeling that someone might be watching them. That evening, Henry visited again. He noticed David's careful handling of the items and asked many questions about their origins. David answered truthfully but kept certain details to himself. He did not want to reveal the hidden compartment just yet, fearing it might attract unwanted attention. Henry seemed to sense David's caution. "You are very careful with these discoveries," he said. "That is good. Some people might not understand their value or importance." David nodded, agreeing without revealing too much. He still felt uneasy about the presence of someone who knew so much about the artifacts. Mia, however, was excited by Henry's knowledge and asked him questions about the symbols and carvings. Henry answered patiently, and Mia listened with fascination. As days passed, the tension on the farm grew. David started noticing that some tools in the barn were slightly out of place when he arrived in the morning. Haystacks seemed disturbed even though no one had been there. It became clear to him that someone else had been in the barn recently. David decided to act cautiously. He placed a small lock on the barn door and made sure the hidden room was secure. He told Mia to stay close to him and not go into the barn alone. "We must protect these artifacts, Mia. They are more than just old objects. They are pieces of history," he said. Mia agreed. "I understand, Dad. I will be careful." One evening, as the sun began to set, David walked toward the barn to check on the artifacts. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink. When he reached the barn, he noticed footprints leading to the back corner. Someone had been inside recently. His heart raced. David called Mia and whispered, "Mia, we need to investigate carefully. Do not make any noise." They entered the barn quietly, flashlight beams cutting through the dim light. The hay was slightly disturbed, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth. As David inspected the barn, he realized that the footprints led to the area near the hidden compartment Mia had found. Nothing else was disturbed, but the signs were clear. Someone had been there, and they had known about the hidden treasures. David felt a mix of fear and determination. "We must find out who is coming here," he said to Mia. "We cannot let anyone take these items or damage them." Mia nodded, gripping the bronze amulet tightly. "We will be careful, Dad. I will help." The following day, David noticed Henry acting strangely. He asked more questions about the farm, the artifacts, and their locations. David felt that Henry's curiosity was growing beyond what seemed normal. He could not decide if Henry was trustworthy or if he had other motives. David decided to observe Henry more closely. He watched how Henry handled the artifacts and listened carefully to his stories. Everything seemed polite and knowledgeable, but David's instincts told him to remain cautious. He knew that history and artifacts could attract the wrong kind of attention, and he wanted to protect the farm and its treasures at all costs. Meanwhile, Mia continued exploring under David's supervision. She found small clues about the past, tiny carvings in the barn walls, pieces of pottery buried in the soil, and even fragments of old letters tucked in the hidden compartment. Each discovery added to the mystery of the farm and strengthened their connection to the people who had lived there long ago. As night fell, David and Mia sat on the porch looking at the barn in the fading light. The farm was quiet, but the air was filled with anticipation. They had uncovered secrets, met a mysterious historian, and sensed that someone else might know about the treasures. Yet despite the tension, they felt excitement and curiosity. The farm was no longer just a place to live. It was a world full of history, mystery, and adventure. David held the sun-shaped stone in his hand, thinking about what lay ahead. The artifacts were more than objects. They were a connection to the past and a challenge for the present. He knew the coming days would bring answers and perhaps more questions. Mia, holding her amulet, smiled with hope and excitement. Together, they were ready for whatever mysteries awaited them. The farm had been quiet for days, but David could not shake the feeling that someone was watching them. He and Mia continued to explore the barn and the hidden room, documenting every artifact carefully. The strange events, footprints, disturbed hay, and slightly moved tools, made him more cautious. He had learned to trust his instincts. One morning, David woke early as usual and went to check on the barn. Mia followed closely behind, her flashlight bouncing across the floorboards. The air was crisp and smelled of wet earth from the previous night's rain. As they entered the barn, they noticed something unusual immediately. The door to the hidden room, which David had carefully locked the day before, was slightly ajar. David's heart raced. "Mia, stay close to me," he whispered. They stepped inside slowly, shining their flashlights around the room. Everything looked normal at first, but then they noticed the boxes of artifacts were disturbed. Some were tipped over, and a few items lay scattered on the floor. Before David could react further, a noise echoed from the corner of the barn. A figure stumbled toward the floor, groaning softly. It was Henry, the historian. He was lying among the broken artifacts, his arm bruised and his clothes torn. David rushed to his side. "Henry, are you all right?" David asked, helping him sit up. Henry coughed and shook his head. I don't know. Someone attacked me," he said, his voice trembling. "I was following the trail of artifacts when someone hit me from behind." David felt a chill run down his spine. The farm, which had always felt safe, now seemed full of danger. He helped Henry to a chair in the farmhouse and checked his injuries. Thankfully, they were minor, bruises and scratches, but the situation was serious. Someone had been willing to hurt a person to get to the artifacts. Mia watched quietly, holding the bronze amulet tightly. She was worried but remained calm. David explained to her what had happened and reassured her that they were safe for now. Once Henry recovered enough to talk, he explained that the artifacts were very valuable. "Someone in town must have learned about them," Henry said. "They wanted to take the treasures for themselves. They may have followed me here, hoping I would lead them to the farm." David's mind raced. "We cannot let anyone harm these artifacts or us," he said firmly. He knew that they had to act quickly to protect the farm, the artifacts, and themselves. The local police were called, and officers arrived to investigate the scene in the barn. They took statements from David and Henry, examined the footprints, and noted the scattered artifacts. The officers assured David that they would patrol the area and keep an eye out for anyone suspicious. Despite the police presence, David could not ignore the tension in the air. He felt responsible for protecting the treasures and the history of the farm. He spent the rest of the day securing the barn, locking every door and making sure the artifacts were carefully stored in their boxes. Mia helped, learning how important it was to handle each item gently. Over the next few days, David and Mia reviewed all the artifacts again. They realized that some of the items had connections to ancient local settlements. Maps, carvings, and coins suggested that the farm had once been a place of strategic importance. They began piecing together a story of the people who had lived there centuries ago, imagining why they had hidden their treasures in the barn. David also noticed that Henry was studying the artifacts more closely than before. He seemed both fascinated and worried. One afternoon, Henry pulled David aside. "These items are not just valuable," he said quietly. "They tell a story of survival and history. Whoever attacked me wanted them for money, but these artifacts are priceless in terms of knowledge." David nodded. "I understand. That is why I must protect them. The farm has been in my family for generations, and now it holds a history that is even older than we realized." Mia listened carefully and asked questions about the symbols and carvings. Henry explained how each artifact could reveal information about the people who had lived there long ago. Together they examined the sun-shaped stone, the bronze amulet, and the small carvings, trying to understand their significance. One afternoon, while cleaning the barn, David noticed something he had missed before: a small trail of footprints leading toward the back of the barn. He followed them carefully and discovered a tiny compartment in the wall, partially hidden behind stacked crates. Inside, there were more artifacts: old coins, carved figurines, and a few pieces of parchment with drawings and writings. David realized that the attackers had missed this compartment. He quickly documented the findings and moved the items into secure boxes. Mia helped, amazed at the number of treasures the farm held. That evening, as the sun set, David sat on the porch, thinking about the events of the day. The farm, once quiet and peaceful, had become a place of mystery and danger. He knew that they were not alone in wanting the artifacts, and he resolved to protect them no matter what. Mia sat beside him, holding the bronze amulet, and asked, "Dad, do you think anyone will come back?" David smiled gently. "I do not know, Mia, but we will be ready. We have learned to watch carefully and to be cautious. The farm's history is important, and we will protect it together." The next morning, David and Mia continued their careful exploration of the barn and surrounding fields. They found more clues about the people who had lived there long ago: broken pottery, small carved tools, and even a few pieces of jewelry. Each item added to the story of the farm and its hidden treasures. Henry continued to assist, studying the artifacts and providing explanations about their possible uses and meanings. He showed David and Mia how the carvings on the stones matched symbols used in ancient settlements, and how the maps could indicate trade routes or important locations. One afternoon, while examining a large crate in the hidden room, David noticed a faint scratch on the floor. It looked as though someone had dragged a heavy object recently. He realized that the attackers might have returned when no one was watching. His heart sank at the thought. David decided to install better security around the barn. He set up a system of locks, alarms, and cameras to protect the artifacts. Mia helped by drawing diagrams to keep track of the locations of each item. They worked as a team, learning how to safeguard the treasures while also uncovering their secrets. Despite the danger, David and Mia felt a sense of pride. They were discovering the hidden history of the farm and learning about the lives of people who had lived there centuries ago. The barn, once just a building for animals and storage, had become a gateway to the past, filled with stories waiting to be told. One evening, as the sky turned orange and pink, David looked at the barn. He felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. The hidden room, the artifacts, and the recent attack had shown him that the farm was much more than land and animals. It was a place of history, mystery, and discovery. Mia held the bronze amulet tightly and smiled. "Dad, I think we are part of the farm's story now," she said. David nodded. "Yes, Mia, and it is our job to protect it and learn from it." As night fell, the barn stood quietly under the stars, guarding its treasures and secrets. David and Mia went inside, closing the doors carefully. They knew that the coming days might bring new challenges, but they also knew that together, they could face whatever mysteries awaited them on the farm. The struggle in the barn had reminded them that history could attract danger, but it had also strengthened their bond and determination. David realized that the farm was not only a home but a place of learning, courage, and adventure. Mia, excited by the discoveries and the mysteries, felt ready to continue the journey with her father. The morning after the attack, the farm felt unusually quiet. Birds chirped in the distance, and the morning sun painted the fields golden. David walked to the barn, Mia following closely behind, her small hand clutching the bronze amulet. They had decided to continue their careful exploration. Despite the recent danger, they both felt a responsibility to protect the hidden treasures and understand their true significance. David entered the barn slowly, examining every corner. The hidden room remained locked, but he had already made plans to secure it even more carefully. Mia's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she helped him organize the boxes of artifacts. Each item seemed to tell a story. The sun-shaped stone, the bronze amulet, carved figurines, old coins, and parchment papers with drawings and symbols. Henry, the historian, arrived later that morning. He had spent the previous night researching similar artifacts in his library and brought new insights. "David, Mia, the items you have found are remarkable," he said. "They are not just pieces of history. They represent the lives and culture of people who lived here centuries ago. These artifacts were hidden to protect them from danger, and now you have uncovered them." David listened carefully. "So the farm was more than just land for farming?" he asked. "Yes," Henry replied. "The barn and the surrounding fields were part of a settlement long ago. People who lived here faced threats from outsiders, and they hid their treasures to keep them safe. Your discoveries connect you directly to that history." Mia's eyes widened. "So we found their secret treasure?" Henry smiled. "Yes, but not for gold or wealth. Their treasure was knowledge, culture, and the evidence of their lives. You have brought it back to light, and that is a great responsibility." David nodded, feeling proud but also aware of the weight of the responsibility. Protecting the artifacts meant protecting the farm and its history. He knew he had to be cautious about who knew about the treasures. Over the next few days, David, Mia, and Henry worked together to organize the artifacts carefully. They cataloged each item, photographed them, and stored them in safe boxes. Henry taught David and Mia how to clean the artifacts without damaging them, and explained the significance of each carving and symbol. While documenting the items, David realized that the recent attack had not been random. Someone had tried to steal the artifacts for personal gain. The police continued their investigation, but the thief remained unidentified. David became even more vigilant, checking the barn multiple times a day and reinforcing locks in hidden compartments. One afternoon, as they examined a bundle of old maps, Henry pointed out something important. "David, these maps show routes and locations that were important to the settlers. Some areas are marked as hiding spots for their valuables. The hidden room in your barn was one of these places, and there may be others on the property." David felt a surge of excitement. So the farm could have even more secrets waiting to be discovered? Henry nodded. "Yes, and it is important to approach this carefully. Each artifact tells a part of the story. You have already uncovered a great deal, but there may still be more. Mia leaned over a parchment, her eyes tracing the drawings. Dad, look. Some of these symbols are the same as the ones on the amulet and the stone. David examined the symbols. You are right, Mia. These must have been very important to the people who lived here. They may have used these symbols for guidance, protection, or memory of their traditions. As they worked, David and Mia began to understand the connection between the artifacts and the history of the farm. The objects were not random. They formed a story of survival, culture, and careful planning. The people who had hidden them wanted to ensure that future generations could learn from their lives. Henry suggested that some of the artifacts be preserved in a local museum for research and education. David, these items are too valuable to remain hidden forever. They belong to history, and sharing them with the public will honor the people who created them. David agreed. But I want to keep some here on the farm. This land is part of my family and part of their history too. It is important for Mia and me to understand and protect it. Henry nodded in agreement. That is wise. You can share some artifacts for public learning, and keep others here. This way, the farm's story is preserved in both places. Over the next few weeks, David and Mia carefully prepared the artifacts for transfer to the museum. They selected pieces that were safe to move, and Henry helped write explanations for each item. The museum staff were fascinated and impressed by the discoveries. The story of the farm, its hidden treasures, and the people who had lived there long ago became a local highlight, attracting visitors and historians alike. Despite the museum's attention, David and Mia kept the barn and the hidden room private. They continued to explore the property, discovering smaller artifacts and clues that had been missed earlier. Each day brought new excitement and knowledge. David realized that the farm was not just a place of work. It was a living history lesson. One evening, David and Mia sat on the porch looking at the barn. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the fields were calm and quiet. Mia held the bronze amulet and smiled. Dad, I feel like we are part of the farm's story now, she said. David smiled back. Yes, Mia. And now it is our job to protect the farm and the history it holds. We have learned so much, but there is always more to discover. Henry, visiting one last time, added, You have done a great job, David and Mia. Not only have you protected the artifacts, but you have also learned from them. The farm's history is safe, thanks to your care and dedication. The experience had changed David and Mia. They were more confident, curious, and aware of the importance of the past. The farm was no longer just a home or a place to work. It was a place filled with stories, knowledge, and a connection to generations long gone. As weeks turned into months, the farm returned to its peaceful routine. Animals were fed, crops tended, and the barn was carefully maintained. Yet the sense of adventure and discovery remained. David and Mia often explored the fields, looking for small signs of the past and imagining the lives of the people who had hidden their treasures. One bright morning, David held the sun-shaped stone in his hand, reflecting on all that had happened. The struggle, the mystery, and the discoveries had taught him that the farm was more than land and animals. It was a place of history, courage, and learning. Mia, sitting beside him, held her amulet tightly. Dad, do you think there are more secrets to find? She asked. David smiled. I am sure there are, Mia. The farm has been around for generations. History is always hiding in the soil, the barns, and the fields. We just have to look carefully and be ready to learn. The barn stood quietly under the morning sun, guarding its hidden treasures and memories. David knew that the artifacts were safe, the history preserved, and the farm's story continuing with them as part of it. The past had come alive through their discoveries, and the future held even more promise for learning, adventure, and family. David and Mia walked through the fields together hand in hand, knowing that their bond had grown stronger through this journey. They had faced danger, solved mysteries, and discovered the importance of protecting history. The farm was no longer just a home. It was a place of wonder, discovery, and connection to the generations that came before them. As the wind gently rustled the trees, David felt a deep sense of peace. The farm, with its barns, fields, and hidden secrets, had taught him and Mia the value of curiosity, patience, and responsibility. And together, they would continue to uncover its mysteries, ensuring that the story of the land and its treasures would never be forgotten. The farm, once quiet and ordinary, had become a place of history, learning, and adventure. David and Mia, now guardians of its secrets, knew that the greatest treasure was not gold or jewels, but the stories, knowledge, and courage that had been preserved for centuries.